Good morning. Welcome to Connect Daily Bread, where we recognize that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Today's reading is in Acts chapter 25, and here we go. 3 days after arriving in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him and presented the charges against Paul. They requested Festus, as a favor to them, to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus answered, "Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me, and if the man has done anything wrong, they can press charges against him there." After spending 8 or 10 days with them, Festus went down to Caesarea. The next day he convened the court and ordered that Paul be brought before him. When Paul came in, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him. They brought many serious charges against him, but they could not prove them. Then Paul made his defense. "I've done nothing wrong against the Jewish law, or against the temple, or against Caesar." Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges?" Paul answered, "I am now standing before Caesar's court, where I ought to be tried. I have not done any wrong to the Jews, as you yourselves know very well. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by these Jews are not true, no one has a right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar." After Festus had conferred with his council, he declared, "You have appealed to Caesar you will go." A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, "There is a man here whom Felix left as a prisoner. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests, and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand anyone over before they have faced their accusers and have the opportunity to defend themselves against the charges. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered the man to be brought in. When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus, who Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. But when Paul made his appeal to be held over for the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until I could send him to Caesar." Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear this man myself." He replied, "Tomorrow you will hear him." The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the audience with high-ranking military officers and the prominent men of the city. As at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus said, "King Agrippa, and all who are present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. But I have nothing definite to write to his majesty about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of this investigation, I may have something to write. For I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner to Rome without specifying the charges against him." So now we have Paul's trial before Festus. And it's just much of the same, right? These chapters are just really getting him about the process it took to get him from Jerusalem testifying about Jesus to Rome to testify about Jesus. So we've got now Governor Festus has a trial set up for him. He's been asked by the Jews to take him to Jerusalem. Once more, they've got a group ready to ambush and kill him along the way. Paul is determined to get to Rome. He's not determined not to die. We'll find out when he writes Philippians a bit later, to live as Christ, die as gain. Like, man, it's going to be so much better when I get to be with Christ than to die. So it has nothing to do with that, but it has everything to do with fulfilling the mission in which he was called to, for completing the task, fighting the good fight. And so he declares to go to Caesar. And because he's a Roman citizen, that appeal has to be honored. And then King Agrippa the Jewish king, which is really just kind of a figurehead at this point. But King Agrippa and Bernice, his wife, are in. They're kissing the ring, paying respect to this Festus guy who'd just become governor. And he gets asked, Agrippa does, to hear Paul's case, to help have something to write about him as he sends him on to Rome. So they enter with great pomp, and then we'll hear the case. We'll hear what Paul has to say in tomorrow's reading. So those are my thoughts. Go ahead and comment anything that stood out to you. Love you guys. Have a good one.